A person that is empty can't give you anything. A person that's empty can't give you anything. And people who are narcissists, people who have narcissistic personality disorder, people with narcissistic personality, they don't have anything inside, and that's why they can't give you anything. And I was thinking about future faking. And the concept behind future faking is you always telling somebody what you're going to do, but you don't never do it. And that's the main thing that narcissists do all the time. When I was a little girl, I used to go to church. I used to go, and I loved, there was 2 churches that I went to as a kid. One church was called Miller Memorial Baptist Church, and the other church was Corinthian Baptist Church. And I love those churches. I love those churches. And I guarantee if I was still living in Philadelphia, I probably would have even still been going every now and then, at least just for the music. You know, I don't believe in this human being that they try to call Christ and all of the other stuff. But Bible is allegories for living, and that's what I learned when I went to church. I learned that the Bible is for our life, and that the same mind in you as in Christ Jesus exactly means that. Is everything that the Bible is talking about when it's talking about Jesus is actually talking about you, right? As a man thinks he is. And we are our own creators of everything. Well, anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent about the whole church and that part of it, because what I really want to talk about is the how when you are in a narcissistically abusive relationship, that narcissist will continue to future fake you. And it won't be until you totally break out of that relationship. It won't be until you totally break free from that relationship till you realize they didn't ever have nothing to give you. And unless you yourself are empty, you still have everything inside of you to be okay. And that's where we're starting today. Thank you so much for downloading another episode of Managing Your Own Radical Change. From Trauma to Transformation is my first series, the flagship series. And I'm talking about healing from narcissistic abuse. I may talk about other things from trauma to transformation because it's a lot of trauma that a lot of us have experienced. And me, as being a 55-year-old woman and really doing the work to think about and process and recover and, you know, really be introspective about everything I'm doing has, you know, created this really good way to empower other people, right? I want to empower other people to take a look at your past, to understand narcissistic relationships and abuse in your own life so that you can manage your own radical change. That's why this is me managing my own radical change. I'm managing my own radical change to inspire and motivate others to manage your own radical change. And I actually have another podcast called Radical Change Leadership that I'm probably going to wait until October 1st to launch that one. But that podcast is all about leadership, and is all about the necessity for leaders to learn change and what that actually look like. It looks radical. It looks like radical acceptance. And that is one of the main themes that we're going to talk about. But inside of going and moving and transitioning from trauma to transformation, there's a lot of introspective and historical work that must happen. And when you take the time to do this historical introspective work, it's very healing. It's very healing. And it definitely is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you some time. It's going to cost you some energy. It's going to cost you some tears, right? If you do it right. But it is why I say your first job is healing. Our first job is healing. My first job is healing before anything else. And it's very hard to do when you're under a constant assault, whether it's an emotional assault, a physical assault, a verbal assault, a financial assault, assault by patriarchy, capitalism, you know, whatever the hell, right? It doesn't matter. It's very hard to be what we like to say, productive, right? It's very hard to get shit done. It's very hard to be all you're going to be when you are under constant attack. It's hard to heal. And when I'm talking about healing, I'm talking about getting to a point where things don't trigger you, right? Where if I go downstairs and my kitchen is not clean to the 95% level, I shouldn't be triggered once I'm healed from that. I went down today, my kitchen was about 85%, and I was triggered. That means I'm not healed over that shit because the trauma was significant and it was long lasting. It was through all of my formative years. So I can be easy on myself and I can tell myself, hey, as a little girl, your mom terrorized you over the kitchen being wet or some grease being on the back of a pot or a spot of grease being on the stove, or your mom terrorized you over that shit. She terrorized me. And when I can tell myself that, when I can grieve that, when I can cry over it, when I can say it wasn't fair, and I can say, fuck you, Christine. That's releasing, that's healing. And one day I'm going to go in the kitchen and it's not going to matter what it's going to look like. And all I'm going to do is go in there and clean it up. I won't even notice it. It won't have any impact on me whatsoever. One day it's not going to matter. Whether the kitchen is at 90%. One day I'm not even going to be able to look at my kitchen and say, oh, it's 90% clean, it's 85% clean. I'm not even going to be able to quantify that. I'm not even going to be able to quantify it when I'm healed. Because when I'm healed from that trauma, it's not going to bother me anymore. When I'm healed from the trauma of domestic chores and I'm healed from the domestic violence, the physical abuse, emotional abuse, the terrorization that I suffered, when I'm healed from that, right? It's not going to bother me. It's not going to bother me. Now, every now and then, if I go over somebody's house and they got a really dirty kitchen, I may get a quick little flashback, but it's not going to compel me to clean the kitchen, their kitchen. It's not going to compel me to say something to them about their kitchen being dirty or being less clean than I think it should be. It's not going to do it at all. When I got new carpet in my house, I went from a tan brown carpet to a light gray carpet. And the guy was like, you want a light carpet? I was like, yeah. And I have white walls and white trim and white cabinets, except for the bathrooms have tan or off-white, I guess you call it, eggshell, whatever. But anyway, I was like, that's what I want. And because then I could see it's clean. When you have white walls, you could tell if the wall is dirty. And guess what? If I see a little spot on the wall, I either go over there and try to wipe it. If I can't wipe it, I can get the little, a little sander thing that you hold in your hand, the little scrubby thing. If that doesn't work, then I have touch-up paint in the closet and the brush and a little bowl and a pair of gloves. And I could go bleep, bleep, and I could touch the paint up so that it looks nice and clean. Now, some people might say, wow, that's a little obsessive, right? You got white walls and you don't expect to get little smudges or spots on them. I do expect to get smudges and spots on them. That's why I have touch-up paint and I have little stuff to clean them. And as you know, my house was new construction. When your house, when it first gets built, right, it settles. And so you start getting little cracks in the wall and different little things. And, it is important to, just kind of take care of it as far as I'm concerned. And part of maybe why I'm so the way I am is because of my abuse that I suffered when I did not have everything to be a certain way. Now, I went to therapy for years and years and years. And at every round of therapy, I've always talked about You know how my mom used to beat the shit out of me for cleaning. And how I used to have to do grown people's clothes, which I thought was really nasty and disgusting. To make a child do men's laundry. I just thought it was nasty. Anyway, and I remember talking to many, many therapists about it over and over and over again. And what I came to the conclusion is that one of the effects of it is I like things to be very, very clean. I also like to be alone because when I'm alone, I can control how clean stuff is. When somebody is around me, I can't control how clean stuff is. And so I just, in silence, I just either go and clean up after a person or I just avoid the area altogether. And so what I've been working on for, a few years now is this whole exposure therapy. So you actually like go to the thing that, triggers you and just deal with it, and just sit in it and just feel the feelings. And that's very hard for me to do. So I go in, and usually when I'm in the kitchen, I'm doing two things at one time. I'm multitasking. And I'm multitasking because then it's like I can almost like disassociate from the thing I'm doing, because the thing I'm doing is the source of a lot of pain and a lot of abuse. Right? I remember my mom snatching me out of the bed to clean the kitchen at 5 and 6 years old. Snatching me out the bed. I mean, I'm so happy about whatever day I decided and figured out how to close my door and then put my bed in front of it and barricade it so that I couldn't get pulled out the bed in the morning. And that's what I did. And everybody knew, they would have had to break the door down and push the bed. Now, I'm sure the bed, I can imagine a twin bed in the 70s probably was, 30. I don't know how much the bed could weigh. But if I was 100 pounds, 90 pounds, 80 pounds, whatever, they wasn't breaking down the door that was locked and the whole thing and pushing all of that. Because then I think it would have been like, oh, well, now somebody got to repair the door, and why'd you do that? And it would be a whole thing, I think. But anyway, that's how my mom used to wake me up. And it didn't matter what time it was. It didn't matter. She was screaming, and she would be screaming and howling like a crazy person. Like a crazy person. Over shit not being clean to her liking. And years later, my mom became a hoarder, which I think is super interesting, because when I cleaned out her closet, after she had a heart attack and a stroke and everything, she had brand new clothes in there from the 70s and 80s, still in boxes, still in the packaging. Shoes never walked on. Shoes never walked on. Things never taken out of their Sears packaging, and some Gimbals and other old companies that that was still in the packaging. And that said a lot to me. That said a whole lot to me about her value over things more than anything else. Over, definitely over me. But it said a lot. And in order to reconcile with that, right, psychically, emotionally, for my own recovery, I have to admit that this shit was bad. I have to admit that I was mistreated. I have to admit that I was abused. And that shit hurts when it's your mother. Now, I'm assuming it hurts just as bad if it's somebody like your grandmother or aunt or something like that. I'm assuming, but I just don't think it could be exactly the same, because I think one of the things that we learn in church, right, is, your mother is supposed to be this like Mary type of figure, right? This person that's supposed to sacrifice and love you and blah, 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 blah. And then when they don't, but you're supposed to still treat them like they doing it, it's a lot of cognitive dissonance. A lot of cognitive dissonance. And that's the abuse. It's the gaslighting. Oh, that's just how your mom is. Oh, it's not that bad. Well, you ain't all bruised up. Oh, you'll be fine. Oh, put some ice on it. That's the kind of shit people that know you being abused, they tell you. Imagine somebody telling you to put some ice on something that your mom did to you. Okay. The type of things I had to do as a little kid. I remember when my daughter was little, like her first chore, well, other than picking up her plate off of the, dining table, whatever. But her first chore was matching socks. Her first chore was matching socks. And I thought that was a very child appropriate, thing, right? Then we went up. Then she would fold the washcloths when she was little. Then we would, she learned how to fold underwear or whatever. But her first chore was just helping out. Like helping fold the clothes, but keeping her own room and her own stuff clean. Folding her clothes, by the way, not my clothes, her clothes. Matching up her own socks. Folding her underwear, right? Not mine. And I remember people saying, like, how come you don't got her doing this? Or how come you don't have her doing that? I'm like, my child's not a slave. She's not a servant. But realizing that a lot of people in my generation, that's how we got raised. We got raised as mini slaves. Now, yeah, we got to do stuff, right? But if you had to do all the housework as a kid, as a little kid, I mean, only thing I didn't have to do, but I used to have to help my mom make her bed. But I didn't have to make her bed. But I would have to vacuum her room. I would have to wipe her, dress her down. I would have to clean the bathroom. I would have to wash all the clothes, sweep the rug, vacuum the rug, clean the kitchen, including the floor, and take out the trash. Now, my stepfather would take out the trash a lot of times. That's for real. He would take the trash out. But I did a lot of everything else. I used to have to wash his work clothes. He would wash his work clothes, but I had to wash all his other clothes. His work clothes had to be washed in some kind of whatever because he was a grease monkey person. So he worked in a gas station and doing all that stuff. And so he would always have all this grease all over him. But it was bad. It was bad. And I'm not going to move past those things if I don't look at them. I'm not going to move past those things if I don't look at them. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of us are stuck. A lot of us are stuck because we won't look at the shit that we need to look at. We will not do the first step in this work. We won't do the first step in managing our own radical change. We won't do the first step so that we can move from trauma to a transformation. We won't do the first step. And the first step is acknowledging what happened. The first step is to acknowledge what happened. The first step is to acknowledge what happened. And that means literally sitting down and saying, yeah, I had a fucked up childhood. Yeah, my mom used to beat my ass. Yeah, these things used to happen to me, etc., etc., etc. Until you acknowledge what happened, you're going to find yourself in the same spot over and over. Once you acknowledge what happened, you need to move as quickly as possible to radical acceptance that none of it was your fault. You couldn't have avoided it. You couldn't have stopped it. You did the best you could with the information and the resources you had. If you was a child, shame on every adult that was around you that did not help you and did not get you out of the situation. Shame on every last one of them. Radically accept. Shame on them. Shame on them. And the ones that helped, I'm telling you, I had some amazing people in my life. I tell people all the time when you read my other book, my babysitter, Gaga, she was a real one. Mrs. Thomas, that was my very first babysitter. And then Gaga had a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was the bomb, diggity. She had another neighbor, Mrs. Cunningham. She was the bomb. Even the lady across the street that didn't like me that much, Mrs. Cunningham didn't like me that much, but Mrs. Evans, she loved me. And Mrs. Evans and Mrs. Thomas, them two women, they could make the best damn cookies. Ooh, butter, sugar, egg, and some vanilla. Oh my God, come on now. They used to make the best oatmeal. So I had them women. Then I had Mrs. Taylor, who was my cousin's grandmother, and she was like my grandmother. Oh my God, I love that lady so much. She used to send me food up at college, and my mom wouldn't send me shit. Told me eat that cafeteria food and like it. And then she was laughing. But anywho, I had all these other people that filled in the gap when they could. And, looking back, right, not only did they fill in the gap, they did the best they could with the resources and abilities that they had. And the best they did resulted in me being here today. The best those women did resulted in me being here today because I didn't give up. I didn't become a narcissist. I didn't become a violent person. I didn't get strung out on drugs. I didn't become an alcoholic. I didn't become, unhealthy, obese person. I didn't, drop out of high school. Like I achieved success. And I achieved success because I had so many people around me showing me love and empathy and kindness. Although my mom was narcissistic and 3 of her sisters and my grandfather. So in the midst of that, I had other people around me. So I can radically accept 2 things at the same time. That my mom treated me horrible. My stepfather treated me horrible. That a lot of my aunts and my mom together, they triangulated me and did some things and harmed me financially, definitely emotionally, psychically. I mean, my daughter doesn't have a relationship with any family members except for me. And it's really sad. Like, I mean, she might talk to a couple of her cousins, I don't know. But like older people. Because I had to go no contact with my family. And so radically accept that, they were more comfortable with a child predator being at a family reunion than they was telling people, hey, there's a child predator coming to the family reunion, or telling him that he can't come. So I decided I don't need to be in a family with those kind of people. And then once I started really, really unpacking narcissistic abuse, like I've been unpacking like family, I was just calling it generational trauma, right? I was just calling it post-traumatic slave syndrome, which it's part of that. But like now that I understand narcissism overall, I understand it societally, I understand it, organizationally, and I understand it individually, I understand it relationally in all ways. Listen, we have a whole society of narcissists. Dr. Romney said 1 out of 6 people. So if you got 10 people in your family, 1 and possibly 2 of them motherfuckers is narcissists. So my mom grew up in a house with 4 sisters and a mother and a father. That's 7 people. And they had their share of extra narcissism. Which lets me know that the house was much more violent than I realized, because as I got older and now that I know and I've like gone back and looked at all these past relationships, everybody I know who is a narcissist grew up in a very violent household. Now my household was violent, but it was only violent to me. And I wouldn't allow for the gaslighting, and I used to fight back, and then it stopped being violent for me probably by the time I was 9. 10 at the most. It was so rare, but by then it was only emotional violence and stuff like that. But I had also been around so many loving and kind people all the time that it was like, oh no, my house is bugged out. My house is bugged out. My house is bugged out because most people is not having all this going on. Now I ain't saying some women ain't getting their ass beat down and but I'm talking about the kids ain't getting treated like how Christine is treating me. No. And so I said to myself, this is not going to be my legacy. My first decision as a young person was I wasn't going to have any kids or get married. That was my life. And then how I ended up getting married, manipulation, abuse, triangulation, gaslighting, future faking. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to get better. Oh, I'm going to get a job. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do... Listen, it never happens. A narcissist will leave you hanging, and then at the end, when you realize you wasted your time, you wasted your energy, you wasted your money, then you're going to be like, damn, okay? I remember messing around with this dude, and I helped him when we got out of college. Got him an American Express card and did this and that. Of course, he fucked me over on that and then ended up marrying somebody else. And then years later, wanted to, have an affair. Like, when I tell you, narcissists will leave you high and dry. and fuck you over, period, and then act stupid about it, and then be judgmental. But you will always, when you look at the relationship later, realize that you lost financially, no matter what you might have got. So like, let's say you went out with somebody that had a lot of money, right? And I'm going out with people that have had a lot of money. It doesn't matter. You still going to lose, because at the end of the day, you're going to lose your time. You're going to lose your, your emotional whatever, through some kind of game and some kind of bullshit that they're going to play with you. And so it's just never worth it. And then when you look back, you're like, So part one is acknowledge what happened to you. So I don't care if it's a boyfriend, a husband, a mother, a father, a niece, a nephew, a cousin, an aunt. I don't give a fuck. Somebody does something to you and they hurt you, and you really start to sit down and you examine that relationship. Acknowledge that you have pain over that. Acknowledge that you are grieving that. Acknowledge that hurts. I mean, it's like, when I think about like the things that people have done to me, my God. I be thinking to myself, how the hell I even get out of bed? Well, guess what? I get out of bed because I am fulfilling a purpose in life, right? And one of my purposes is to be great and to empower the greatness of others. One of my purposes is to be great and to empower the greatness in others. And so that means I have to work on me so that I can share who I am with the world, period. And somebody else will see a smidge of a reflection of themselves and be like, "Ooh, okay." And so how did you get there? Okay, so I do some things, right? I do some things like journal. I do some things like grounding. I do some things like, sometimes I do exposure therapy. Sometimes I do journaling. I might have said that one already, but it's part of the process, right? And so inside of the radical acceptance of, it's nothing you could do. People did what they did. People made the decisions they made, yada, yada. Inside of that is radically accepting that from time to time, you're going to have a hard time. From time to time, you're going to have a hard time. From time to time, you are going to have a hard time. And that's okay. From time to time. But when you have these hard times from time to time, you get to take the opportunity to come through it without harming yourself or anybody else. Give yourself time. Time meaning time to rest, time to cry, time to grieve, time to feel the emotions and deal with it. Give yourself empathy, meaning actually imagine, right, how bad it was, and think about the comfort that would have just made all the difference in the world. Give yourself that comfort. Give yourself that comfort because you know what it was like. So give yourself that comfort, right? Right? Give yourself that comfort. And the third thing is give yourself the rest. Yourself the rest. One of the things that we don't do in the healing process, and I don't know if people talk about it or not, probably not because everybody's fighting to survive capitalism, but one of the things that we don't talk about enough is rest and how healing requires rest. Like, I remember when I tore my calf. I tore my calf muscle on my left calf because I thought, my right calf, because I thought I was in a Serena moment. I can't lie. I was in a Serena moment. I went up for a smash. I had my right hand up. I took my steps back. I saw it. I had my left hand up. I saw it, and I jumped up. I hit it perfectly, and as I jumped up, I felt this boom, and I was like, ah, and I crashed to the ground. I fell to the ground. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what happened. I thought I got shot in the calf. Now, here I am in a park at a tennis court in a snooty ass part of Wilmington, Delaware. And no guns or people around. Like, this is like 20 years ago, 18 years ago, something, 15, 17 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. There's nothing like that. But I'm like, ow, what hurt so bad? And I just like was shaking. The pain was so bad. Come to find out, I tore my calf muscle. In what I like to call a Serena moment, because I was great, do this great smash. And that basically was really almost the end of my USTA ranking kind of situation for the 35 and up. Because it was really bad. And I went through a series of not healing because I kept going to stupid doctors that just kept on giving me drugs instead of telling me, well, first we need to repair the tissue. And instead of telling me to go to physical therapy, they just kept giving me muscle relaxers and painkillers. And every time I would feel better because I took the painkillers for 3 days, then as soon as I would walk, it would hurt again. I'm like, this is not fixed. So then I went to physical therapy, and they explained to me, if you have a soft tissue injury, always go to physical therapy. And so I was like, okay, thank you, cool. Between physical therapy and acupuncture and massage, my shit got better. Years later, tore my rotator cuff, same thing. Physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, got better. Ankle, same thing. Physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, got better. Boom. Those things work. Physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, those things work. That's how you heal a soft tissue injury, right? There's also ointments that you can put on yourself, right? Castor oil works for a bunch of stuff, blah, 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 right? Either way, right? If you have an injury, you have to address it. The same thing is these wounds that we have. We got to address them. And we address them through acknowledging their existence. And then we address them through radical acceptance. Radical acceptance of who we are. Radical acceptance of who the narc is. And radical acceptance that nothing was our fault. We did the best we could. And now we get to have our own life. And we get to relinquish that person from having any power over us, right? So if you had a narc in your life, let's say it was an ex-husband or wife, and they did some fuck shit with your money, relinquish them from your pocketbook, from your bank account, from whatever. Relinquish them. They took the money. Guess what? They got away with it. Guess what? They got away with it. They kept the house, and they stole your shit. They kept shit that your grandmother gave you. They kept shit that your aunt gave you. They kept your family Bible. They kept your kid's birth certificate. Fuck them. They kept it. They kept it. Let them have it. Let them have it. Let them have it. They crashed up your car, and ruined your credit, for like 9 years. You know what? Fuck it. Credit. If you're black, you know what it is anyway. You black. I don't know any black people with a credit score over like 720, 730, maybe a couple, maybe old people, but not anybody young. So it is what it is. I definitely don't know no black people with an 800, 850. But it is what it is, right? Like, let's get to a point, right, where it's like, okay, you might think about that shit every now and then and be like, Or like Dr. Romney be talking about having difference about everything. Like you can just have indifference. Like, you don't give a shit. Like, if something great happens to them, oh, good for them. Something shitty happens to them, who cares? Or who cares either way? Or whatever. Like, but get to an indifference point. And then you're healing. So I got a lot of work to do to manage my own radical change. I have a lot of work to do to manage my own radical change. And I'm okay with that, because change is a consistent thing. Change is what we get to lead, right? I talk about leaders learning change and radical change leadership because we get to lead the change instead of letting that change drag us around. We get to lead it. But in order to do that, there is work that we have to do. And I think that work starts with healing. And that work starts with that acknowledgement. Damn, these things happened to me. These people did me dirty. And, this is what I learned from it, right? Acknowledge what you learned
and use what you learned to propel your growth forward. Thanks so much. I think this was a good one. I want y'all to rate these podcasts. I want you to share the podcast. And I want you to go to radicalchangellc.my.canva.site, which is my Canva site, and check out what is going on. If you are in the Oregon area, there is a survey for you because the Leadership Learning Collective is bringing community-focused training to you in 2025. So I'm super excited about that. So go to the website and check it out. And if you have not, download the Leaders Learn Radical Change or the Radical Change app and message me. Let me know how you like the podcast. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I'll see you next time as I continue to do the work of managing my own radical change from trauma to transformation, healing from narcissistic abuse. Thanks, y'all. See you soon.